first, I thought it might be a large white-tailed deer or a buck stepping into a clear area. However, upon closer observation, I realized it was not a deer due to its distinct movements. The subject moved quietly and deliberately from my right to my left, crossing in front of me at an estimated distance of 75 to 100 yards. It was walking upright on 2 feet, and it was incredibly tall. It stood approximately 6.5 to 7 feet tall, and it had very long legs. The arms were extremely long too, and reached below its kneecaps. I hadn't seen any deer yet, so I began to watch this creature. I watched it for about half an hour, as it moved slowly and deliberately from the tree, despite a slight wind blowing from my direction.
Okay, after that first set, obviously still working with a strain, I guess, pectoral strain or whatever. It's not that I can't fight through it and just fucking force the reps out, but I don't know, because you really can't see like it's huge difference. But when I'm moving the weight, I can really feel. It almost feels like I'm like this, you know. That's how far behind this side is. So we'll make some adjustment here, because the plan for tonight is chest and back. We're gonna do the barbell inclines and some rows. I'm gonna still do, chest. There's 185 on the bar that I was gonna do inclines with. I'm gonna drop down. We'll do some dumbbell inclines. I'm gonna get the 50s, and I'm hitting the rows with the 60s. So I'm gonna do the incline with the 50-pound dumbbells, and I guess about 8 sets. Between, somewhere between 10 and 12. Somewhere, something that I can, is still putting, getting some good work, but I can still have somewhat good form. Because, it's not that big of a deal to push and slang the weight around sometimes, but sometimes it is when it's just too much. So that's it. We're going to switch it up a little bit.
Firmly denying that Bigfoot existed. Unfortunately, that was the end of my trip, and I never had another chance to return to the hunting grounds. We had no more incidents like this one, and I was never able to get my deer. In 1983, I purchased a 2-acre lot in the Westwood subdivision in Whistler. One night, I was cooking outside while Wes was inside working on the wiring. I was crouched down and stirring our dinner when a really horrid smell came wafting by me. It smelled worse than a combination of wet dog and dead skunk. I put the lid back on the pot and stood up, looking around to see if I could find where the smell was coming from. It wasn't long before my brother smelled it too from inside the house, and was about 250 yards away. The creature was at least 8 feet tall. It had a very broad chest and long arms. One of the things that stood out to me was that it had a very large head, and the forehead seemed to slope from the brow ridge to the back of the head. The creature would watch us while we were working and then disappear. I felt like they were trying to keep track of what we were doing. My brother and I both think that these were several Bigfoot creatures, and they were only coming forward since we were moving into their territory. In the next month, more homes were beginning to be built nearby, and I never saw them again. From his childhood. This is a little off topic, but he kept to the sled because of the movie Citizen Kane. He would sometimes talk about how important of a message the movie had, and I guess he thought it was neat that his sled was just like the one in the movie. When we arrived at the hill, I remember being so excited by how we had it all to ourselves. I could race up and down it as much as towards the creature, that I used my gloves to cover my eyes from looking at it closely. But my curiosity ended up taking over, and I found myself staring through the gaps between my fingers. There was too much black hair covering the eyes, therefore, I didn't get an adequate look at them. It reminded me a lot of how old English sheepdogs look. You wonder how they're able to see anything in front of them, with all that fur. He pointed the men in the wrong direction. He told me it was while we were sledding down the hill past the creature that he saw the look of overwhelming fear on its face. He believed that all it wanted was to be left alone, and that those armed men carried malicious intentions for the poor beast. I've always thought of that discussion as a profound event in my life. Sure, Encountering a Sasquatch is the top of the list as well, but my dad's words were what truly instilled a newfound level of compassion within my heart. This species is most certainly out there, trust me, but I can't help but wonder what humankind would do. As a little kid, I believed it all, and I thought that I wanted nothing more than to never see one of the creatures for as long as I lived. Unfortunately, I would not get that wish. But there's one thing I can say, and that's that it has more interest, in my opinion, and from my own experience, in harming humans than it does in messing with us. It was a gorgeous fall day, and school was just about to begin again. I had one more week through the trees at a high rate of speed. In fact, whatever it was had been running so fast that it looked like a giant red blur that circled around me more than once. I watched until it stopped, but whatever it was seemed to disappear behind a tree nearby. I didn't bother to go and try to discover what it was because I was scared, and I just wanted to get back to the safety of my house. I packed up fast to hear the twins start screaming inside the house because they had heard it too. The next thing I know, something huge dropped down out of the trees behind my dad in front of me, off to the side. It was about 12 feet tall, maybe taller, and at least 6 feet wide. It had reddish-brown hair all over it, and the hair was very long. I remember watching it land there, after jumping out from high in one of the trees, and as it stood there, it seemed like it was shaking off the physical shock to its feet from the landing. I was immediately terrified, and way too scared to scream to alert my father of its presence, even as it headed right towards him. My father was dealing with his own issues, as the coops had all been broken, and I remembered that the beings were dangerous to the chickens, and therefore their livelihood, but they stood firm, my parents, and looking back on it, I realized how hard that must have been to do, especially in a town like the one I grew up in. The following day, my dad made us all stay home and inside the house, while he had one of our closest neighbors, a man who he was very good friends with, go into the woods near where I was fishing to check out my story. If it would attack me or something like that. So I always make sure to respect my environment, no matter where I am, but especially when I'm anywhere in the woods or another creature's territory. That's all I've got for now, but I hope one day that I can write in with a more recent story. Well, maybe that's what I hope. I'm not too sure. And swung the tracker back, only to find the trail before me filled with a creature standing nearly 20 feet away. This being stood at an astonishing height of around 8 feet, boasting long arms with distinct fingers, a barrel chest, and a pot belly. Its eyes, deeply set and intense, locked onto mine, while its mouth hung open. Strangely enough, its ears appeared small in proportion to its massive frame. Time seemed to stand still as I stood frozen, my hound's call forgotten in the face of this surreal encounter. I couldn't tear my eyes away as the creature wrapped its hand around a large spruce tree. Its hair wasn't doing much to help reverse that intent. It was only a few minutes later that Travis re-entered his vehicle that had emerged from the woods. Initially, I thought it was an ogre or a troll or something. The size alone made it impossible for it to be a mere human in a costume. I gasped before covering my mouth out of fear that this ugly thing was going to notice me. Of course, we were in plain view. I shouted at Travis to get us out of there, now more afraid than I had ever thought was possible. Travis looked at me like he was hurt. It was a look that conveyed he was letting me in on some intimate secret, and I was rejecting him for it. But all I could think about was getting as far away from that place as possible. It very much felt like we had intruded on some psycho's property, only that psycho just happened to be from the middle of nowhere. The chances of them getting in touch with TV studios seems pretty slim. Thank you for your interest in my encounter. In the early morning hours of March 2016, I found myself in a small fishing boat with two companions, quietly navigating the waters of Old Mill Lake, located near the Missouri River. Having spent less than an hour on the water, it started to smell really gross. We all began to look around, wondering where it was coming from. It was only a few minutes until I spotted it. I noticed movement in the forest sheriff's department. I spoke with the deputy and I gave my account of the incident. but I was afraid to give any other information than what he asked for. I did tell the deputy that I was concerned for the creature's well-being, and I hoped that no one would go out and try to hunt for it. I told the deputy that the creature did not pose a threat to anyone or anything. I was concerned that if there was one Bigfoot in the area. The next morning, we awoke to find almost all of the blueberry plants had the mulch taken off and piled in one spot without any trails leading to it. A bear, raccoon, or whatever would have just scattered the stuff. The mulch had been deliberately placed. I found a faint track by the plants, but might have found another track way leading down on the hill in our front yard. It paralleled our dog's track. There was a popular trail leading to the top, but for whatever reason, it was essentially removed from the map shortly thereafter. I wrote a trip report once, and the trip was completed on our third attempt. It was along this route that my experience occurred. Please bear with me, as there are some minor details that now seem to add up to the possibility of a Sasquatch encounter. At some point along the route, we decided to call it a day and set up camp for the night, although it was not late, maybe 4 or 5 p.m. My friend Addison was completely beat and crawled inside the tent for a nap before dinner. I, however, was completely buzzing with energy. We had come across the bones and remnants of a deer. It was not fresh, but what stood out most to us was the state of the thing. It was ripped to pieces and all over the place. Clean breaks too, as if something tore it apart with ease. Again, we attributed this to a bear and thought nothing more of it. As I type this out, I am almost hesitant to click send, because I see no reason why this could not be a big gray mutt, because I could let him run and not worry about other dogs being around, like on the other hiking trails. So one day, after I'd been there for a couple of weeks, I decided to go a bit further and make it more of an outing. I packed a little day pack with water for me and Smokey, and some snacks, and then I headed out. I guess it was about 10 a.m. We climbed up the mountain, following a deer trail, through the scrub oak, and up into the hikers from town. Maybe they had fallen and broken a leg or something. I kept this question and answer session going with myself for a while, trying to decide what I should do, and then again, I heard the cry for help. I decided to yell back and see what happened. I yelled at the top of my lungs. All I heard back was the same cry for help. It was kind of spooky, and my intuition said something was wrong, but something not normal. Now Smokey was pulling hard on the leash, panting, really wanting to go home. This confirmed my hunch that something was definitely not right. I decided to run back down the hill and call the sheriff, as I wanted to do before. This time, I took off running as fast as I would have to backtrack up a small hill to avoid a big rock outcropping, and there was no way, so we kept going. I decided once we got to the ski hill, I would hike on down it and then walk back through town. It was way out of the way, but I didn't care. I just wanted to get to where there were people. I stopped for a moment again to catch my breath, though Smokey kept pulling. I was breathing pretty hard, irrational fear. Suddenly I broke through the brush. It was a road. I had come to the road that went to the top of Howelson Hill. We now started a full-on run as we took off downhill. Within just a minute or so, I came upon some hikers going uphill. I ran past them without even saying hello. Soon, I came to more people, but this group was going downhill. I stopped running, and I walked behind them a bit. I was exhausted, and hiking down with them.
Well, that's it for Tuesday. That's it for Tuesday, folks. I had to make some modifications. It was originally scheduled for some barbell inclines and some rows. I explained this shit earlier. Switched it up a little bit, you know. Like I said, I had to modify it. I ain't super jazzed on that workout, but I think it's only because I had my mind set on doing one thing and I had to change it and do something else. So sometimes that can make you feel like you ain't did nothing. You know, I know I wasn't straining, you know, to failure and all that, you know, but I know I got some work and some stimulation in my back and in my chest. But obviously still have a little bit of a tweak or a twang, a little bit of a pull or a strain or something going on right here in the left, either pectoral or shoulder somewhere. So, I figured with yesterday taking off from upper body, supposed to be legs yesterday, that day there would, I'd have been ready to go. But, apparently, obviously, I'm going to need another, just a little bit longer. Not a big deal. Not that big of a deal at all. Because, like I said, we still come out and did something. After that first set, I felt it was still a little affected. I could have easily said, no, fuck this, I'm going to go in the house. But, I still did something. Still got some work. Even though, like I said, I ain't too jazzed on that. But I think that's primarily because they might, you come into a situation having how things are going to go in your head, and then you get to the situation and you have to switch it around and change it. It can throw you off, so. Like I said, that was Tuesday. Had to swap around a little bit, do some stuff differently to accommodate my little strain or whatever. But it's okay. We still come out here and got something, man. Tomorrow's Wednesday. Supposed to get on the legs again tomorrow. Probably won't see you. Probably won't see me tomorrow. But we'll be back Thursday. We'll try it again. It's more chest Thursday, so. And tomorrow's leg day is a whole nother day, a whole nother, day's worth of opportunity to recover, So hopefully, maybe tomorrow or Thursday, it'll be a little further along, a little closer to healed up, man. So, till then, man, y'all take it easy.